Hey everyone, welcome back to Bachelor Happy Hour. I'm Joe.
And I'm Serena.
And we are here today with a very special guest who has not been on The Bachelor. Susanna, welcome to Bachelor Happy Hour. For our listeners, she is also Bachelor Data, what a lot of people know you as.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be on.
Of course, of course. Where are you located? Where do you live?
I'm joining from Denver, Colorado. So if anybody's been following me, I actually started my whole Bachelor data journey out in Boston, Massachusetts. And then through working on this page, we were actually able to move to our dream state out here, Colorado, for all the skiing and everything, living the good life out here.
Nice. You are you from Boston?
No, I actually grew up in Austin, Texas. So moved to
Okay.
Boston after college.
How do you feel about Austin, Texas? I'm actually going there for my brother's bachelor party.
It was a really fun town to grow up in. I haven't been back since 2019. So
Okay.
I think it's a pretty different city these days. I saw it through the before it became cool, and then it became cool around the time that I was in college at UT Austin. And it's a really fun town.
Nice, nice. Okay, so you went to University of Texas, you said?
Yeah, I majored in elementary education, became an elementary teacher actually at the school I grew up going to. And then I met my now partner, Tim, and we met in Austin, Texas. And then he had to relocate for work up to Boston. And it was through that whole process with work that Bachelor came to be, or Bachelor Data came to be. I got a job out in Boston as basically like a tech specialist, helping teachers with technology and education. And that position morphed into a technology director role. And on one of my job applications, I lied and said I was proficient in Excel, as we all do.
Yeah, no shame. This is a safe space.
Yeah. And all I could do, if anybody does use Excel, all I could do was like equal sum and then drag like a range of cells. And I was like, yeah, I know how to use Excel. And ended up getting the job and found out on the first day that I had to actually be proficient in Excel, that they were really relying on that person to run reports, build dashboards, and stuff like that. So the first few months, I kind of struggled along with the help of my dad, who's an engineer, constantly calling him up for help. And then that Christmas break, I was home for Christmas visiting my family, and an ad came on the TV for Colton's season of The Bachelor. And my dad was like, hey, you should really consider analyzing something more fun as a way to learn Excel instead of using this like state testing data, which is really boring and dry. And I was like, maybe we could analyze like the social media growth for Colton's contestants. So I set up a spreadsheet with all the contestants' Instagram accounts. And every single day of Colton's season, I would open up every single one of their profiles and I would take their follower counts. And that way I could see what happened on the show that led to the most social media growth. And basically, that became a project for about 2 years for me to learn how to use Excel. And then I started my Instagram account during Peter's season, so just before the world shut down.
Okay,
That's
okay.
wild.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so wait, did you watch the show or was it just like random, like, let me just start,
Analyzing The
analyzing The
Bachelor.
Bachelor?
Oh God, no. So I started watching The Bachelor when I was in college. My freshman year, I was
Okay.
like in my dorm, bored one day, and I started watching, I think it was Brad Womack's season or Jake Pavelka's. One of those two was my first, and I went back and watched previous ones. So I've been watching the show since then. So I've watched Bachelor Pad, I've watched Winter Games, like I've done them all. And it was just like a fun thing for me to watch and, chat about with my friends, with my mom. And the data part of it is where it really got fun for me, because then I could, we have these assumptions that we make as we watch the show, like the people who get more screen time, the people who get one-on-one dates, the fan favorites, they're going to get more social media growth. But then it started to really grow into something else where people were like, well, if you wear a certain dress color on night one, will you make it further? Or if you get the fireworks date or the horseback riding date or the helicopter date, will you be eliminated quickly or make it further? And it just kind of snowballed. And now I think last I looked, we have analyzed over 80 different data points on the show, everything from screen time, date types, social media growth, ratings, like we do it all.
Can you watch the show now and watch episode 1 and kind of have a good feel for who you think is gonna go far?
Uh,
Just
I
based off of just based off of data.
I wish that I could, but unfortunately, so since I analyze data, right, and numbers in general, I have to be aware of every single variable that impacts the data that we analyze. So, like social media growth is the big one, right? And one of the major things that I have to keep an eye on that could impact social media growth are spoilers. So, and a lot of seasons, spoilers are incorrect until like halfway through the season. We saw that with Joey's season. The spoiler was that Daisy won until partway through the season, and then it switched to Kelsey. But those are things that I have to be aware of to see if they're impacting them. I don't have any interest in spoiling. So I'm not like Bachelor Fan Take or like the other accounts that like they're trying to dig to find a specific spoiler. Like I don't care. So I typically try to stay away from fueling spoilers, but I have to keep an eye on them.
Do you have to keep an eye on them for the purpose of seeing how they affect people's followings?
Yeah. It is but it depends on the season. So that's the interesting thing about social media growth. You have some like most seasons, the spoilers will come out before the season even starts to air. But a lot of seasons they do not impact social media growth. So like Claire and Tayshia's season, the spoiler about Zach winning was out before the season started to air, but he was non-existent on the social media trends until like the last 3 weeks.
Real quick, because I want to go back to the beginning, Colton season, because it's
Yeah.
also around my time. So I want to ask about
Himself.
yeah. Real quick. You said on your Instagram story that you thought you would never be invited on this podcast. Why did you think that?
Well, the thing that's interesting about my page is I will report the data regardless if it's good or bad. You know, I
Mhm.
I don't hold back. I will say, especially as somebody who I started as an elementary teacher, I did a lot on digital citizenship and I've preached a lot of wanting to make the internet a better place just because as something that I've learned especially with my account is that negative content makes you grow like crazy. And not to like get like political and stuff, but we can really see that outside of the Bachelor universe as well. Like if you create negative content, man, it creates divisiveness in the comments that pushes your stuff through the algorithm. So
Yeah.
over the
Like all
last few
this
years,
rage baiting we're seeing now on like TikTok, people like
yeah.
intentionally making videos that like are just going to piss people off for engagement.
Exactly. And like I've seen it in my own trends. I analyze my own data, obviously. And anytime I post controversial things or things that air more on the negative and critical side, I get a ton of social media growth. And if I were to lean into that, I could easily have like 900,000 followers, but I'd really try to be picky about what I do. I am critical of the franchise at times. I do think that there are certain decisions sometimes where I'm like, what were you guys thinking? This was not a great decision. And it's always typically backed by the data. But I have to say, like, mad respect that you guys had me on. And also, if anybody is listening, it was very much like there's no data off the table on this conversation. You don't need to like, hold back. And I really respect that.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, we follow you. I started following you after my time on the show and Joe, I think around the same time.
I started following you because I was like, oh wow, this is like I'm not really interested in like spoilers for the show or anything like that because I just don't really care. But when your page came up, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like I want to know how this shit works because
Yeah.
it is like I feel like so you started around Colton season, which I was Becca's season, so the season before. But I do feel like that was kind of the time where like people's social media accounts were really starting to blow up, right?
Yeah. And I do have some data points from before Colton season. Like I do have your data, but
Let's
it
hear,
was
let's
really
go.
it was really like 2016 to 2020 that we really saw just social media take off, not only for this show, but also the influencing world outside of The Bachelor for other reality TV shows as well. I feel like that's where people really started to watch just TV in general and be like, oh, I love this person that I'm watching. I want to see their day-to-day lives. I was even guilty of that myself during Colton season. I was like, Hannah Godwin has the best highlighter. Like, I need to go follow her to figure out which one it is. And I still buy that one to this day. Like, I think that's where we really saw that pick up, but also the influencing side of things, which also really fed into that. And then when the pandemic hit, that's when TikTok came in and kind of we're now starting to see decreases in that because people's attention is now being spent over on TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some data points you have on me?
Okay, really interesting because
Curious, you know?
I forgot that I had these. So I was able to get through Reddit and then also some of my own data points that I took just out of curiosity for Becca's season. So I have all of your cast, how many followers they had a week before the show aired. And then I have data points throughout the season plus a week after. But for you, a week before Becca's season aired, you had 420 followers. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
You
were
never got
actually
like 3 posts.
Yeah, I don't even think I would say in a week before that I just started my Instagram.
Yeah.
and
Well,
it's
didn't you make
interesting.
Instagram to go on the show?
Yeah.
You actually, your cast, there were quite a few men who had big followings. One of them, I will say, was buying followers, but he was pretty irrelevant.
Who was it?
Leo.
Coolio. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about him. But there were people with like 177,000 followers. Camille, we had a lot of contestants who like actually had a decent following. Colton Underwood had 42,000 followers. But
Wow.
what's really interesting is that Joe, 420 followers, less than 24 hours after the premiere aired, he was nearly at 10,000 followers already, which was pretty big back then. And
Yeah.
then by the end of the season, so a week before the finale aired, he had 74,000 followers. Reminder, if you guys have forgotten, Joe was eliminated night 1. So that's pretty crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I was
said
on
it
until
was.
final
I
4. I don't
remember
even
it.
know if I had that many followers.
I remember it being crazy. I probably lost all those people now. I don't know why. I mean, yeah. That's
Wow.
crazy.
Shout out if you're listening to this podcast and you were one of those OG 70K
Yeah.
followers.
And then, so the big thing about the end of Becca's season was Bachelor in Paradise aired the next day. So right after the finale. I don't have data points because, again, I really wasn't doing this seriously back then. But a week later, Joe already had 186,000 followers.
How that's crazy. How can you tell if you actually see, I've never bought followers, but can you tell if somebody is like, you could actually
Yeah.
tell how? Like, what's the
Yeah,
tell
so
on
it
that?
takes some time to research. And let me tell you guys, I was so happy when I looked into y'all's followings because I have scrapers running on the back end that runs everybody's like counts and like important people, former leads, etc. And I can't just look at a data set and be like, yeah, they're buying followers. So there's a lot of investigation that needs to go into it. But the big things that we look at are just sudden gains in one day, and then the next day a sudden loss. So anytime I see big gains, like I was looking through y'all's follower accounts last night to be like, ooh, should I not bring up buying followers?
Yeah.
But I can because you guys are in the clear. I was
No, we're
looking
losing.
at,
I'm losing.
We're losing
I lose on a
followers.
consistent basis. I don't even know what I did.
but I was looking through your accounts and I was looking at when you guys got married, but I didn't know your wedding date off the top of my head. And I saw both of you guys suddenly gain that 1 month. It was 2022, right? October.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
our like courthouse
Our
wedding.
courthouse wedding. We
Yeah.
popped, yeah.
So I saw both of you guys gain. So whenever I see gains like that, the first thing I do is I go in and I investigate first, like, was there anything in the media happening with them? So I searched during those dates and I was like, boom, they got married. But I'll see, were there any controversies happening? I'll take a look through a feed and see if any posts went viral around the time that that post went up. And I'm seeing those gains. Like there's a lot that feeds into it. The other thing that I'll look at is engagement on posts to see like the view count versus the likes versus the follows. And then the last thing that I'll look at too, when I suspect somebody is, I'll go and look at their following list where you can see people who have followed them. And the way Instagram displays that is it shows the most recent people who followed on that list. And you can look
Just a
down that
bunch of
list and
bots.
see it looks like a bunch of bots. Yeah.
Interesting.
Have you ever had anyone from our franchise?
Or any franchise, I guess, because you
Well,
do data
yeah.
on other reality shows as well, right?
Yeah.
Reach out to you and kind of like upset with you, like
Or any like
don't
crazy
put, like,
DMs from
yeah,
people
like
being
don't
like, "Don't expose me," or like, "Tell me how to get more followers."
I've had one.
Really?
really? Who? Could you tell us? You don't have to if you don't want to.
I can tell you guys after this.
Okay,
Okay.
tell us after.
I do have a question. So like I do know a way people, so like I'm assuming I lose followers kind of on a consistent basis. You
Yep.
know, I only grew followers. I'm not from being a content creator, but from being on a television show, which then you are somewhat relevant and you're in the news, and that's kind of how you grow. So since I'm off a show, I'm constantly losing followers. why is that? Like, why is it just like people are just like, I no longer want to? I mean, obviously, people are like, I no longer want to follow him. But why is it a like? It's almost like kind of constant. It's
Like a
weird.
pattern,
It's like
like
a
a
pattern.
Yeah, so I've listened to a lot of interviews too from the Instagram CEO, Adam Masiri, on this. And it's really interesting. So people are, first and foremost, people are constantly auditing the list that they follow. So be it they look through their following list to clean it up a bit, or they're swiping through stories and they see stories from somebody and they're like, oh, I'm just not interested in this person anymore, and they unfollow. It's really so many different variables, but also a lot of people are, especially in the last like year and a half with all of the TikTok and Meta and what people are doing with their data. A lot of people are deleting their accounts. There's so many different variables there, but the biggest one I think is really just the people auditing their following lists and seeing who they want to follow and who they don't. But and it's also, so it's really interesting the way the Bachelor franchise with social media growth happens versus something like Love is Blind, for example. It's my favorite example comparing those two because two very different platforms, right? The Bachelor franchise, whenever a season ends airing, right, it's available on Hulu that you can watch for a certain amount of time and then it disappears. Like you can't just go onto Hulu and just watch Matt James season, for example, or Katie Thurston season.
Mm.
You really have to go dig for it or go on Amazon and like rent the season or buy the season. Whereas other network shows like Love is Blind, for example, whenever a new season drops, you'll see that contestants from previous seasons see a big gain in social media growth because people start to watch that season and they're like, oh, let me go back and watch the old seasons. And then they'll watch season one and be like, oh, Giannina, let me go follow her and see what she's up to now all these years later. So it's really different, the viewing habits and the following habits of different networks as well.
That is interesting. Do you ever track engagement rate?
I do. And it's really interesting because, especially during a season, to see engagement rates of who's interacting on which posts, we'll typically see that, especially in like this post 2020 world, a lot of people are engaging really negatively on the more like villain edits of the show. Or people who are getting arguments within the house, they'll be like team so and so or team so and so. Then people fight within the comments. That typically drives a lot of the engagement. And then you also have people really wanting to support and commenting on everything for the fan favorites each season. But that's actually one of the data points that I tracked during Colton season. My first one was like, did anybody do brand deals in the middle of the season? So how many ads they did, because that was allowed back then. And now it's, I
Oh
don't think it is
yeah,
allowed
I
Yeah.
anymore.
know. Yeah.
And then also engagement rates, I'll track the percent engagement rate that I pull from another app. I'll pull it a few times during the season just to see how it changes for contestants.
Why do you think? Okay, so you mentioned like you started around Colton season,
Yeah.
and that was even like before then. There was like I remember, I want to say even like Nick Viall's season of The Bachelor. A lot of the women like it wasn't crazy because I remember going on the show doing my own research, and it wasn't crazy for you know a few of the girls to get 100,000 followers night one. Now, like, and you think about like Peter Weber's season, and there was so many women that got such a large following. We don't really see that anymore. Even Joey's season, which was fairly big, I feel like a lot of the women didn't really blow up till later on.
And there's only
Uh,
like a select few from my. I mean, correct us if we're wrong. You have all the
yeah.
data to tell
Yeah.
us if we're right or wrong. But
So, well, actually, so Joey's season, Maria and Daisy actually grew faster at the beginning of the season than anybody did on Peter's season. But Peter's season was the peak growth that we saw in this franchise. Nobody grew as fast as they did on Peter's season until Joey's season. But Joey's season, they actually grew really quickly. But then towards the end of the season, it didn't speed up as much as we used to see back in the day. So if
Okay.
people haven't seen the data report, so I actually do post, and you can see it on my page right now. It's one of my most recent posts. You can see their social media growth through the whole season for the final four contestants. What's really interesting, if you haven't seen this data before, is that the growth is really fun to watch during the season, but the last 3 weeks, and especially post finale, that's where the majority of growth happens. And that is still that way to this day, but those gains were a higher rate back in 2020 than they were these days.
okay, yeah, I remember both on The Bachelor and on Paradise. My biggest bump of followers was at the very end, if not like after my time on the show had
Yeah.
ended.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
for me. Yeah, well, our season of Paradise, I felt like my growth was really towards the end. It was like the last couple episodes, and then like a month after. and then it slowed down.
Paradise also used to be a huge social media gainer. Like that was the show that you went on to gain the most social media, also, or the most growth on social media. Also, quick note on Peter's season, this is a really interesting point too, because if people are new here, I know that there are a lot of people that are like, "Ooh, we don't want people on this show that are gaining followers. We want this to be focused on love," and then they'll cite things like, Maddie and Hannah Ann, like they went on the show for love. They didn't have a big social media following. That's wrong. So Maddie, before the season started to air, she had over 40,000 followers on Instagram already, and Hannah Ann had 87,000 followers. So
Really?
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
know that.
I
That's
mean, look, that
interesting.
doesn't necessarily, obviously, we know that doesn't necessarily mean they didn't go on the show for love, but it definitely disproves
exactly,
the fact that, oh, you have to have like 90 followers on Instagram to be coming on for genuine reasons. Or
exactly.
like there's people that can come on with disingenuous reasons at 90 followers or 9,000 or 90,000 or good reasons also.
Do,
And
do,
also, statistically, one person out of the 30 contestants are going to make it in the end. So most people know that their odds of winning are pretty low, but that doesn't mean that they aren't there for the shot, because like they have seen there are so many amazing relationships that have come out of this franchise. And if it's not on the main show, there's a good chance they can get on Paradise. And I don't know, crazy enough, lots of people end up getting married who go on Paradise. Like there are so many different ways that you can find love on this show.
Yeah. And
Um,
you're just exposed to this like new dating pool that even if it doesn't work out on the show, there's plenty of people that have met in the Bachelor world off camera that it then works out.
do you think there an edge to having a following as far as growing on social media prior to going on the show? So I had 420 followers, and you said, I think, let's call it, Colton had 45,000. Does he have an edge in the algorithm to grow more and at a faster rate? Like, is Instagram going to push him out more
so,
than they would to somebody that has nothing? Or is there
well,
kind of an even playing field?
there's a combination of factors there, right? And especially it's very different in this day and age now with TikTok than it was before. Because like if we look at Colton or Peter's season, for example, I have it pulled up here. There was a contestant named Lauren Jones. She went on the season. She had 140,000 followers before the season started to air. Nobody knows who she is. She actually, I think, made it to like week 4 or 5, but she hardly had any screen time during the
Mm.
season. So that's a big impact on that variable too. Or even if we look back at Zach's season, there was a contestant, Victoria J. She had like 900,000 followers on TikTok. And, she hardly got any screen time. And even though she was making a lot of content, it really didn't pick up because people didn't recognize her from seeing them on the show
Mm.
because they didn't see her as much. So, but if we look at Daisy, for example, this season, Daisy had a following before she went on the show from TikTok. So she had, before episode 1 aired, she had 43,000 followers on TikTok. And then on Instagram, she had 20,000 followers. And that's because she had already been making a lot of content on her cochlear implant and all that stuff that she had kind of built a following, but she already had that skill under her belt on how to
Mm.
Yeah.
create content, how to tell stories. That coupled with her strong storyline episode 1 and then getting the first date, it was just the perfect combination that it just blew her up in the algorithm. So, what I always tell people is, especially people who just watch this show, we want people on the show who know how to make content on social media because it's this like symbiotic relationship that they get put on the show, they're there for love, etc. But we're also going to get a lot of great content from them that's going to bring in all these new viewers, like we saw happen during Joey's season with Maria and Daisy. It brought in a whole new fan base from Gen Z that just weren't watching the show. So they do kind of have a leg up mainly because of the skill, but it also really comes down to what's being shown on the show.
Right. That makes so much sense. That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's
I
very.
remember when I was working at a PR agency and my bosses were like, girl, you got to post something. Like, post something like once a week, post on your page, like every day on stories. And I was like, I can't do that. Like, I don't think I can do that. And like TikTok was new and I was like, I just got it. Like, I don't even know what to do on here. And obviously, at the time, that was the right decision for me from a personal perspective. It just like, I wasn't ready and I just didn't know. But now looking back, hindsight, the business side of things, like, they were right. I mean, I look at Daisy, who was posting like almost every single week. She had story time, she had structure. Like, she came at it from such a smart angle if we're just talking strictly about social media growth after the show, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those things that, social media is just such an amazing tool. It allows contestants on this show to bring people into their lives, be it so we can see Daisy's story now with her moving to Vegas with her boyfriend and, how that's impacting her life and all with the cochlear implant and everything, or even, watching Joey and Kelsey go on Dancing with the Stars and seeing what's happening in their day-to-day lives. You think back to, even before Joe went on Dancing with the Stars, for example, the show Dancing with the Stars, it's amazing, right? You get to see this competition show, but what we used to be limited to before social media became a thing was whatever we were shown on TV. So,
Yeah.
Dancing with the
Yeah.
Stars, for example, we got that 2-minute package that we got to see them practicing during the week, and that was it. But nowadays, with social media, we can see what's happening in between each episode on Dancing with the Stars, what's happening with practice. Are they doing like fun little dances? Are they, with other
Who's
contestants, are they
dating?
bonding with? Yeah, exactly. Like the whole Brooks and Gleb thing. Like there was a whole extra story this last season on Dancing with the Stars that was happening just on social media that nobody knew if they were just watching the show. And that's where I really think that social media has helped all reality TV shows because we get to see these extra parts of their day-to-day life. And that's one of my things that I'm always screaming from the rooftop at production. I'm just like, you guys have to get like burner phones that are like offline, because I know whenever it's filming, you guys can't be in touch with the real world. But give the contestants a phone that isn't connected to the internet so that they can film content. Can you imagine a get ready with me that Daisy could have made before her first one-on-one date in the mansion with the girls coming in and out of the background? Like that would have been so fun for us to see on social media that I feel like it just helps us enjoy the show more for the people who are diehards like myself. And it's like, give me more content. Like I want more.
Yeah,
I'm
that
so glad
actually
you
is
said
so
that
true.
because like it's so true and it makes me it just like it is. I do believe social media has really helped reality TV and like I remember our season like they wouldn't even tag us like it was like
No,
you
God
you wouldn't
forbid.
even get tagged because they didn't want people you were there for love and anything else you gained was not beneficial
I think
but
the stigma was still like really strong about like if you're engaging on social media, it is correlated to you not being
not being
here
there
for
for the
love.
for the right
Yeah.
reasons or whatever. I question for you. I don't know if you would know this answer, but like as far as the Bachelor audience and take away the contestant's skill set at social media,
Yeah.
what platform, TikTok or Instagram, is like more like viewed or I'm trying to
And more
think of it,
engaged with
more
by the Bachelor
engaged with the
audience.
Bachelor audience? Like what platform's more likely to grow?
So Instagram seems the most consistent, but it's also because a lot of contestants just don't have TikTok accounts still.
Interesting.
Especially depending on the season, Bachelor versus Bachelorette, what women do is very different than what men do. Also, their social media growth trends are very different between Bachelor and Bachelorette. But I would have said 100% Instagram until Joey's season, because Joey's season really showed us that when you have cast members that embrace TikTok, which if people don't use TikTok, there's a very big difference in the type of content that goes on both platforms. So Instagram is a much more polished, curated, like more intention is put into them, whereas TikToks are more off the cuff, like just my content. For example, if I have my hair curled, makeup is done, and I spend hours on a video, it's going to do really well on Instagram. It's going to flop on TikTok. On TikTok, I have videos that hit like 1 million views, and it's like I recorded it first thing in the morning. My face mask is still on my forehead. And like that is the type of content that thrives more on TikTok, because that platform is much more about, this is like my real life. This is, no editing, no filters, etc. That's what TikTok is more focused on. And it's more of the Gen Z, younger millennial audience over there.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, I think this is a good part to end part one with Susanna. Thank you guys for tuning into Bachelor Happy Hour and make sure you tune in for part two.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening. We have more coming your way with Susanna and lots more Bachelor data in our part 2. Thanks for listening. Bye.